Hello, hi, how are you? I hope you guys are having an amazing day today. Hello! So today's video, we are doing a Talktorial Tuesday. I know, it's crazy. Today I wanted to play with the all neutral Natasha Denona Biba palette. So here's the story. If you've been following me for a while, I've talked about wanting this palette for a very long time and just kind of always resisting the urge to buy it, mostly because it's expensive. It's $129, but also because I just felt like I didn't need another neutrals palette, and so I was like, Hannah, don't do it. And then on Tuesday night, it looked like Donald Trump was going to win re-election, and I bought a couple of things via the Sephora 20% off sale. I was weak, I will admit it. And then Joe Biden ended up winning, so now this is like a celebration instead of a, oh my god, everything's bad again, palette. So yeah, we're gonna be playing with this, mostly because I just want to play with it, but also I know people really like Natasha Denona reviews because it's nice to know if it's like actually worth it or what the tea is about these palettes. So I'm really excited. I haven't bought one of her big palettes in a super long time, so I'm excited to play with this. And also, we're gonna talk politics today. I promise after this video I'm not gonna be too political. That's a lie, I definitely will be, but I promise I'm not gonna talk about it in videos too much anymore, except at like the end or the beginning. But today I wanted to talk about the election and kind of what happened this past week, just because I use Talktorials as a way to like catch up with you guys, and I needed to talk to people about what happened this week because it was nutty. Let's go into the shade Tusk right down here, and I'm gonna just put that all over my eye kind of to set everything down. If you don't know, if you're not from America, or even if you are and you didn't know, Tuesday was election day and it was not only a big deal because we had a lot of races happening for like the House and the Senate, but it was also a big deal because it was the presidential election and Joe Biden and Trump and, you know, all that jazz. Lots of fear, lots of anxiety, I would assume, on both party sides. Normally how the elections tend to work in the US is that for the most part, in most elections, we know on Tuesday night who the president is going to be. Because most of the ballots have been counted and there's just like, we're able to at least predict, because elections aren't usually this razor thin close in key states. So on Tuesday night, I was watching the news with my fiance Charles. We were watching and it was looking kind of bad, not gonna lie. It was looking really bad at first. We were really scared. We were like, oh, well, here we go. I think I went into the election this year. I'm gonna go in with Prairie just because I love a good mustard shade. I think I went into the election this year, and I think this is in some way a little bit of like, because there was so much trauma regarding the 2016 election where I thought for sure, if you like, the 2016 election was the first election I could actually vote in. I wasn't 18 during the last Obama election. I wasn't 18 yet, I was 17. So the 2016 election was the first presidential election I was able to vote in, and I obviously voted for Hillary Clinton. And I was not like ecstatic about Hillary Clinton. She was never like my number one, but I liked her. And I also was like, wow, what an amazing moment this is gonna be for women. Like, just what an amazing, powerful moment this will be, regardless of if you like this candidate or not. How powerful is it that we are going to have the first woman president? Like, that's just insane. That's amazing. And I remember in 2016 on election day, I went and voted, and then I went to Panera, and I remember being in the Panera drive-thru because at this point in time, Trump winning was like literally not a thing. Like nobody was like, oh yeah, he's gonna win it. Nobody said that. It was the whole mindset from the media, from everyone, was like, this is Hillary Clinton's year. She is going to be the next president. So sitting in the drive-thru at Panera on election day, and I was like, wow, we are gonna have our first female president tonight. Like, oh my god, how amazing. I'm gonna be able to raise my children in a world where we have had a female president. Like, wow. And then Donald Trump won. And when I talk about it now, it almost feels like a movie, but at that moment, like, I had just started dating Charles, so he was at my apartment, and he fell asleep at like midnight because he thought Hillary was gonna win. And I stayed up until 3 a.m. and I remember CNN calling it for Donald Trump, and I remember him walking down his stupid little staircase with all the red sea of MAGA hats and him claiming victory. And I called my mom at 3 in the morning and I was just crying. Like, I know people make fun of liberal tears. I get it. Like, I know it's so funny to laugh at people in pain, but I was just sobbing. I was like inconsolable. I'm gonna go in with this kind of salmony shade buff here, and I was like terrified. And everybody at the time was trying to kind of calm everybody down, and we were like, how bad can things really get with Trump, right? Like, how bad could things get. Flash forward 4 years, I have to wear a mask everywhere I go. There's 220,000 dead Americans and over 1 million cases of the coronavirus in the United States, which, not that it could have been completely prevented, but could have been much better contained had we had a competent leader. On top of, we've just left the Paris Climate Agreement. We're about to leave WHO during a pandemic. The Supreme Court got completely stacked in favor of Republican values, would include taking away women's rights, LGBTQIA plus rights, like all these things, right? Okay, I could catastrophize forever, but things got bad. And I just want to say, because I feel like a lot of people felt this way, I talked about this on Twitter, but the pain that I felt 4 years ago and the hopelessness that I felt 4 years ago and just the like how much of a slap in the face it was, I literally has not gone away for me. Like for the past 4 years, I have to say, if a lot of people say, well, the good thing about Donald Trump being president is that it made young people care about politics and it made them more aware of social issues, and that is true. Like I not that I didn't care about social issues before Trump, but I definitely was not doing my part to be educated enough on those things, and I was not doing my part to be active about those things, and I was definitely living in my privilege, not even just as like a white person, but as a white woman, a woman who was socioeconomically privileged growing up. Like I wasn't doing my part and using that privilege to help other people in the ways that I should have been at that time. So once he got elected, coincidentally, when I started doing social work and started getting into that program, I think the combination of those two things really helped me, but I tried to become really active. And so for the past 4 years, I've been doing all of these things. And even in the last year and a half, I've been so stressed because as soon as Bernie didn't win the primaries, I was like, oh, we're screwed, because I just didn't know if Joe Biden could produce a level of excitement that like Bernie did. I'm gonna go in with cocoa. And also my whole thing has been getting people to register to vote, because it got to a point with having this platform, I was like, oh my god, I have like 50,000 people following me and I'm not doing anything but talking about drama and makeup. And while there's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong with giving opinions and like making content like that, I'm like, I'm not doing anything positive with this. Like there's a certain power that does come with influence, and I was like, I'm not doing anything to positively influence people. And so I made a choice to try to do something with this. And so for the past year and a half, I've been like, register to vote. And recently, to some people's annoyance, I have been like, vote for Joe Biden, vote blue. And I hate to tell you, that message isn't really going away. And so election night was very high stakes, felt really tense. And for a victory to happen was amazing. But I will say the past week, because I'm filming this video on Sunday, so the past week, we found out on Saturday that Joe Biden officially won. The AP called it, which is pretty much as good as we're gonna get until it's official in December, but I don't think an AP calling has ever been reversed. I know Trump is gonna try to reverse it, but I don't think it's ever been reversed in history that they called the wrong person. So for the past week, I have been doing nothing but watching the news. Like actually nothing. I pulled myself away to do some pre-filming for Glomus, and it was painful. Like between takes, I would want to watch, like check updates, and I had like group chats with all these different people. We're like sending each other all the information we have. We're watching Pennsylvania, we're watching Georgia, we're watching Nevada, and people were like, why is this taking so long? Like I know there was a lot of frustration. I'm gonna go in with Buff. This is performing absolutely beautifully, just so you know. And there's so many people being like, why is this taking so long? And I was one of those people, but at the same time, I had to remind myself, like, we knew this was gonna take longer because of COVID. We knew there were more mail-in ballots. We knew this is what was gonna happen. So this whole week has kind of felt like I saw somebody say this on Twitter, and I was like, wow, that's so true. It's kind of like that week between Christmas and New Year's, but it's hell instead of just normal week between Christmas and New Year's, because everything has just felt so in limbo. I'm gonna go in with Seed. So knowing it got called, and knowing that not only do we have somebody, it's not even about, this is the thing to me, is like, it's not even about like Republican versus Democrat at this point. It's about competence. To see Joe Biden form a complete sentence and be competent was like the most hopeful I felt in 4 years. To see the first woman of color be elected as the vice president, like how amazing is that? Do I wish it was a female president? Of course I do. But that's such a step in the right direction. The fact that we've now been able to overcome that barrier and normalize that a little bit is a wonderful step in the right direction. And I think what's frustrating is now it's like you want it to be over, but Donald Trump will not concede. And I know some people think that's justified, and I know some people think that there is some sketchy things happening with this election. But I would just like to ask, if Trump had won, do you think he would be saying there was something sketchy? Or like, if Joe Biden had lost, do you think we would be having this discussion about widespread voter fraud? No, we wouldn't, because it's not happening. My whole thing was, I try to watch other news outlets when stuff like this is happening. I think I'm gonna go in with Monroe. I'm so happy about this palette. I'm telling you right now, this is so fun to use. Formula is beautiful. I like to watch other news outlets, just a bunch of different kinds of news outlets, because I think it's really good not only to, you know, get information, but I also think it's good to see what the other side, because news outlets are obviously biased. It's good to see what other sides are saying, and it's also good to hear from neutral parties. Like, it's good to get a wide variety of information, I always think. So I was watching a few news networks. It was Fox News, I'm sorry. It was Fox. I was watching Fox. They were basically making the case that the president cannot give evidence yet because he has not been allowed to be let in to see if bad things were happening. So how is he supposed to know if bad things were happening, and how is he supposed to provide evidence when he doesn't know yet? And it's like, so why are you making the claim that it's false? Because he's tweeting very publicly to his followers that the election is rigged and that the results are not real. That is quite horrifying. Frankly, when you have zero evidence and you've admitted you've had zero evidence, you just want to be able to collect evidence. And the thing is, even the little amount of voter, like, I guess they're not even voter fraud, it's like just sketchy stuff that happened. The small amount of sketchier things that have happened, which would not in any way close the gap in Pennsylvania, that's like 50,000 votes at this point. None of that would change that. The amount of stuff I've seen online, most of it has been easily debunked, or it was like human error that they have now rectified after being pointed out. To think that there is like a widespread conspiracy that would allow, he literally said, millions of votes to be not cast correctly. There's no evidence to back that up. Zero. That millions of votes were cast incorrectly or changed, or that it was voter fraud. Zero. He's been doing this whole time where he's like invalidating mail-in voting. But the crazy thing about that, I'm gonna go in with Shine, but the crazy thing about that is this is not the first time that most states have used mail-in voting. Mail-in voting has been a thing for years. If anything, what this election has shown us, with the absolutely outrageous number of people that came out to vote and use their right to vote, if anything, what this should show us is that voting by mail encourages democracy, and more people actually vote when they can do it across the span of a few days. When they can vote by mail, more people are willing to do it, and when it's not this rigid process where you can only vote one day. Hundreds of millions of people live in this country, and we all are supposed to all have just one day that's not a national holiday where everybody has to work to vote. If anything, what we've learned is that voting by mail encourages our democracy, and somehow that's trying to be painted as a conspiracy theory, and I don't think that's a coincidence. I don't think it's a coincidence that when we have a record number of people of color voting in both sides, like in both sides, we have a record number of people of color voting, when we have states that are normally red flipping blue, when we have that because all of a sudden access to voting was easier, I don't think it's a secret that now certain people are trying to make it seem like that's a conspiracy. It's not. It's what happens when you actually are a democracy and allow everybody to participate. I think I'm gonna go in with rayon just to deepen out. These shimmers are gorgeous. So now that everything's at least semi-over, I don't think any of these lawsuits are gonna go anywhere, and even if they do, I don't think he has enough to overturn the states that he would need to overturn to win. So I think regardless of whatever hissy fit he's gonna throw in court, I don't think it's gonna change anything, personally. Just if it does, see you at the Civil War. But I will say, I saw a lot of people, and I always see this when stuff's going on, is people talk about the broken system, how our system's broken. And the problem is that it's not broken. I think that's the sad part. The systems in America that keep people oppressed, particularly disadvantaged and oppressed groups, the systems that are put in place to keep them disadvantaged and oppressed are working exactly how they're supposed to. Like, people are like, oh, the Electoral College is a broken system. No, no, no. The Electoral College works exactly how it was meant to, which is to give certain people in certain areas more of a voice than other people in other areas. And I think the one thing I would like to stress as well is that, and I think this is a really important point to note, is that I think it's important to celebrate victories. So in the sense of getting Donald Trump out of office, I think is something to celebrate. I don't necessarily want to celebrate Joe Biden because I think he's a very flawed candidate, but I think he is a much better option than Trump. So I think celebrating getting Trump out of office and celebrating that victory is so important. Like, you have to take moments to enjoy when, you know, you're fighting for these types of social justice things. You have to take a second to be like, we did something good today. However, I think what's also really important to note, and something that's really important to say, which I'm seeing echoed a lot on social media, which I think is great. I think it's really important to note that, like, this does not mean that the work is done. Like, if you cast your vote for Joe Biden and he won, that doesn't mean that Joe Biden is our savior who's going to fix everything, because he's absolutely not. The amount of activism and work that it's going to take to get basic human rights for people, as sad as that sounds, is nowhere near done. It's nowhere near finished. So while I think it's important to appreciate the win, I also think it's important to remember, now that we have this new president, it makes it much easier now that we have him. Like, it makes it easier, but it doesn't mean that things are fixed and things are done. So if you have been super involved in this whole process, if you have been super involved in protests that have happening, or just even on social media, using your social media platforms to advocate for Biden, advocate for anything, if you have been super invested in this election, don't lose that investment you have in change. Like, that's the one thing I feel like is important to know. Don't lose that passion and that fire that you have felt if you've been pushing for change. Don't lose that just because we have not like a fascist in the White House. Because Joe Biden is absolutely a more moderate candidate, which I don't think is necessarily awful, but it just means that if we do want some of the large scale macro change to happen, we have to be speaking up and pushing for that instead of taking a back seat, like I feel like kind of did happen, especially for white people and people who are maybe not affected by that level of oppression. It's very easy for us to take a back seat and say, okay, like, we did our job, we got Biden in the White House, like, everything's good, but it's not. I just think it's important to remember that the work isn't done and the fight isn't over. So it's like, celebrate, but also get ready, because we have more work to do. And my new sort of register to vote spiel, instead of that, is going to be, if you live in Georgia or you know someone that lives in Georgia, 2 Senate seat elections went to a runoff in Georgia, which is huge, because if the Democrats can win those 2 seats, we will be able to have a lot more control in the Senate, which is a big deal. So my little contribution to this is I would like to start pushing for that. I'm going to be leaving links down below to not only donate to those campaigns, but also to sign up to call people, to get them to get out there and vote, supporting local community organizers who need the funds to help fundraise and advertising for these candidates. I think this is absolutely imperative for democracy. I believe very strongly in that. So I'll be leaving those links down below in every single video and just giving them a shout out at the end of the video. And I just think it's important that those elections are just as important as this one, if not more important. And we need to be pouring a lot of energy into Georgia right now to get those 2 seats back. So we can actually do something with our Democratic president instead of being blocked at every turn by the Senate if we have a Republican Senate that is still run by Mitch McConnell, who I believe is the worst thing that's ever happened to America. Yeah, so the Natasha Denona Biba palette is really good. I don't know if you necessarily need this palette. I definitely did not need this. I will say I'm gonna use this like a lot. It's so pretty. Like, this whole look is so good. Oh my god, I love how it looks. I'm obsessed. I actually, like, low-key have a bit of a crush on my makeup today. It's really pretty. The shimmers look really good, which normally are kind of my gripe, is that the shimmers aren't that great, but the shimmers look great. The mattes blended so well. I really like it. So yeah, it was good, especially with the 20% off. I feel like this might be worth your time if you've been eyeing it for a long time like me. And yeah, I love you guys so much. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please like and subscribe, or just like, or just subscribe, or do neither. Honestly, just so happy you're watching me. Thank you so much for being here. My merch, my social media, and everything I just put on my face will be linked down below, along with links to go help and support the Georgia Senate races. I think that's so important. Please share those links. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!